Jenny wasn't here to make that.
Alrighty. Good to see you all again on the screen. So tonight we have a treat. If you recall, last time we were talking about the ladies, and today it's all about the men. So stay tuned. And women, you'll probably want to hear this too. But before we get into it, there's some announcements. So first of all, just so all of you know, there will be no daily mass or confessions until November 19. And then for our Works of Mercy ministry, we are going to be having street walks this Sunday at 10 a.m. So you'll need to meet here at the chapel at 10, and then there will be training, going to DC, and then everyone will be departing DC at 4 p.m. So they plan on taking the metro, and please just make sure that you bring $10 to cover your transportation, and make sure that you complete the sign-up by this Saturday, September 14th at 5 p.m. And also, since we're following the COVID guidelines, just bring your mask and make sure you fill out the Mason COVID health check. And there should be a link dropped in the chat so that you can sign up for that. Also, for our Sunday night gatherings, we're going to be having an open mic night, 7 p.m. this Sunday, so that'll be fun. It's over Zoom, so you can send in a recording or do it live, and there's also going to be a sign-up dropped below for that as well. And our virtual auction is live right now, so it's on eBay, and it's a silent auction with items starting as low as $10. So invite your parents, invite your friends, invite your neighbors, invite people you don't really know. This really helps us to continue putting on events, have mass, and keep the chapel running. So consider making a one-time donation or bidding on a couple of items to help us out. And just make sure that you keep checking our posts on Facebook and Instagram for those raffle details. And lastly, our Friendsgiving week is coming up this week. It's going to be really exciting. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we're having in-person events. So this will be from 12:30 to 1:30, and it includes things like making some hand turkeys, which I will definitely be doing. We're going to have an ugly sweater party with hot cocoa and cookies, so what's not to love? And then s'mores and a bonfire on Friday. And then if you'd like to attend virtually, on Tuesday and Thursday, also 12:30 to 1:30, we're going to have some Jackbox party games, and then we're going to be playing Among Us on Thursday. So this is our fall send-off event, and it gives the chance for staff to be with the students and for students to celebrate with all the new friends that they made this semester. So there's something for everyone. Alrighty, so now on to what we all are here for. Our talk today is on becoming a man during college, the challenge today. So Dr. John Cuddeback is professor of philosophy at Christendom College, where he's taught for 25 years. He lectures widely on topics including virtue, fatherhood, friendship, and household, and his professional writings appear in various academic journals and books. His book, True Friendship, is being republished by Ignatius Press. His blogging at lifecraft.org, where he offers the online course Man of the Household, is known for applying ancient wisdom to life today. So, go ahead and welcome Dr. Cuddeback. You can grab the mic.
All right, I hope you're welcoming me right now. I'm feeling welcomed. I feel virtually welcomed right now. Good evening. It's great to be here. I'm very excited to spend a little time with you about this. I'm going to share some thoughts with you, and I hope that you do write down or remember, prepare your questions, and then afterwards Nicole and I will be in those chairs behind me, and we'll have hopefully a good amount of time for a little question and answer and discussion, but I did not put on my microphone. Do Did you hear anything that I just said? Is that okay? Yeah. That was a classic blunder, not unlike getting involved in a land war in Asia. Becoming a man in the college years. This is how I'm going to approach this. I have 3 kind of general philosophical principles. I hope you'll forgive me if I get a bit philosophical here at the beginning. I want to give you something really to sink your teeth into that gives you some principles, and then I'm going to make some very concrete suggestions after that. So, my first principle comes from a text of St. Thomas Aquinas where he's talking about what natural law is. And this is one of my favorite lines from St. Thomas. And he says that the human creature, so right now this is about all human creatures. We're going to end up focusing on men. All human creatures participate in the eternal law in a very special way, in a way that is what he calls natural law. But what he proceeds to explain here is that the way that it works is that God has an eternal and unchanging plan for human flourishing, human happiness, what a truly good human life is. And he makes this plan known to us, first of all, by the light of natural reason in a way that we call natural law. And what he says is that he makes that known to us in such a way that we can become provident for ourselves and for others. I love this line. It says a lot about human nature, what it means to be human, and the challenge of living a good human life. That there's a plan. Let's just kind of go big. Here's the big picture. This is the way fundamentally that Aristotle was seeing it. It's certainly the way that Christians have seen it. There's a plan. It originates in the mind of God. As long as God has been God, in other words, forever, this unchanging plan has been his understanding of what a good human life is. He imprints this, he shares this with us. In lower creatures, he just directs them without, as it were, sharing the plan with him. But with human creatures, he shares with us the plan. He gives us insight into it and then says, now act according to this plan. So what St. Thomas is saying here is that we are under the eternal law in such a way, again, that we can become provident, like God is provident, foreseeing, one who arranges things, one who takes care. We can become like God in being provident for ourselves and for others. This is a great image for what it means to be human. And right here, I'm going to suggest, I want to take another very human image that will help us see this, tell us something about our relationship to God. I want you to picture a father and a son. A father and a son at a certain, as it were, important time. And this is going on, perhaps, in stages. But fundamentally, what's going on? The father says to his son, here's the reality. Here's the truth of where things are. I have done my best to unfold this unto your vision. Now it is yours to go forth and do it. It is yours to take this truth, make it your own, live according to it, be provident, be prudent, be careful for yourself, and then lo and behold, at the center of who you are will be likewise then doing that for others. And in doing that, you will especially become who you are. And not just being provident for yourself, but in also being provident for others. This is at the heart of the human vocation, man or woman. There is a plan. There is a oh so glorious plan in the mind of God for what good human life is. The great drama, will we accept it? Will we be willing to look to discover it? And then, most of all, will we be willing to make the arduous effort to put it into action in our own lives? And then, included in that, is helping others to do so too. And this is everybody's vocation.
simply as a human person. But part of the beautiful thing is that's going to take a slightly different form. It's going to have a different mode between man and woman. But first of all, I just wanted to set up that very powerful and beautiful picture. It's so incredibly dramatic. There are so many voices that are telling us, just do whatever, discover yourself, just find what you want, rather than expressing the great drama is, have you discovered the amazing truth of that great plan of which you are not the originator, but which you can discover and implement to receive the gift that's being offered to you, and then to share that gift with others. All right, that's part number one. Second part, responsibility. I love the notion of responsibility. Another great text, the last text was medieval. Now we're going ancient to Xenophon in his work, The Estate Manager. There's a great little section in there where a husband and a wife are speaking to one another, and the wife says, what my mother taught me was always be responsible. And the man says, that's what my father taught me too. Being responsible. What exactly does that mean? It's a very rich notion, but can we just think about that for a moment? I'm going to suggest that to be responsible is to take something or some things as mine to do because I owe it to others for the sake of the whole, for the sake of that great community of which I'm a part. I take it as mine to do this. I will be responsible. I'd like to connect this. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that powerful? Doesn't that call to something deep within us? I'd like to connect that back to the first point of there's a certain objectivity. There's a certain great truth. Again, it's not something we made up. It's something we need to discover. Indeed, it's much better, much more powerful, much more beautiful, much more fulfilling than anything we ever could have come up with. The plan of what a really good human life is and how we must be responsible in recognizing what that plan is, in implementing it first of all in our own life, but then also that sense of being provident for self and then for others. Right at the core of human life is this recognition that somehow my good life is never just about me. There's no such thing as a good human life simply lived alone. There's no such thing as a good human life simply lived for self. Somehow my identity and my vocation is going to be in recognizing how I have much to do for others. I have a part that only I can do. And I need to take responsibility for doing that. And in doing that, I will become the person I should be. Isn't it neat, again, how central this was in an older viewpoint, and how, just to look quickly at a challenge that we have today, the notion of responsibility. I mean, isn't this one thing that we hear when older people look at today's youth? Where's the sense of responsibility? There's a lot that could be said about this, in part because we're always so much encouraged kind of to think in terms of ourselves. What is your dream? What do you want to do? What's your career going to be? We're constantly encouraged just to think about ourself, rather than what has been given to me, what to do for others. What do I owe? What is my part for which I'm responsible? I owe much to others. You know where, I think by an incredible natural design, it was God's intention that for all of us, this become most evident? It was in that amazing little community. It's called a household. Something that in its great richness has become more and more rare. Isn't it interesting in that great text to which I just referred, the sense of responsibility? What was conveyed there was a daughter especially learned from her mother. A boy especially learned from his father. In the context of a household, where better is there a context for this to be patterned? The beautiful notion, the beautiful reality of a man and a woman living in fidelity and permanent fidelity as a husband and a wife, making a life together in this community that's called a household. Love to spend more time on this. I'm going to kind of just touch on this and let it go. But part of our recognizing why this is so little patterned for us today is we don't have these vibrant marriages and households where the fundamental approach is one of my life is one of being responsible to my spouse, to my children. And I pattern that for them. And then they have as the foundation of their existence, the people that are closest to them, this amazing example of precisely that, living life with a sense of profound responsibility towards others. My third point is now to say something about masculinity and fatherhood. This is a very rich topic. What is masculinity? Masculinity is really a kind of set of characteristics of male human beings that is given a certain unity. They all are kind of gathered together. This is the way the tradition puts it. By their being altogether about fatherhood. The incredible insight here is masculinity, what it means to be a male human being, can only be really understood when we understand what it means to be a father. Masculinity is about, ultimately, being a father. We will never understand the differences between man and woman unless we understand the things that most characterize men, masculinity, the things that characterize women, femininity, unless we understand it in the context of, to use a big word, teleology, their natural ordering towards their fulfillment. And what is masculinity for? It's for, we can say proximately, being a husband in some sense of the term, and then being a father in some sense of the term. Likewise, femininity is really only understood when we see it through the eyes of being a wife, ultimately then being a mother. I suggest again the fact that we have lost the incredibly rich natural sense, the rich natural gift of marriage and household and all that that is. This is at the root of our confusion about masculinity and femininity. Because again, masculinity and femininity are understood precisely as being about being able to do well these amazing things called motherhood and fatherhood. So, what is fatherhood? Fatherhood and motherhood, of course, have a lot in common. They both are about, I'm going to be kind of philosophical here, generating. They're about generating what? Generating what's human. I'm going to put it this way, generating human life. Generating the human good. Allow me to keep being philosophical here briefly. So it's important to see that there's different levels of this. The most obvious and immediate level of generating human life is by biologically, right? The marital act, conceiving a child. Here we have fatherhood and motherhood. The father, the mother together have generated, each in their own mode, have generated a human life. So this is the obvious sense of fatherhood and motherhood. Amazingly beautiful. But then as we look more closely, we see there's so much more to it than just the biological element. Immediately in following upon the biological element is that further call to continue to generate. To be a father and to be a mother is to be in an ongoing way generators of human life. That conceived child has so many needs. This is one of the things we must notice about human life. For human life to be what it should be, what it must be, there needs to be this ongoing generation. Where, of course, is that most obvious? It happens in broader ways also, but in the family, in this amazing daily community called the household, where these two complementary roles of fatherhood and motherhood in an ongoing way, in such a rich, deeply human way, with rich bodily aspects, and then especially moving more and more towards the very spiritual aspects, the intellectual aspects, the moral aspects of generating life, generating true human life. There's a third way that we can talk about generating life, and it's as working for the broader common good of the community. This is a very rich notion I'm going to kind of just end up leaving on the side here of, we can refer to like a founder of a nation as being like a father of that nation. That's kind of giving that sense of there's a fatherhood, a way that a man in a very masculine way goes about, once again, generating human life by the kind of activities he does for the whole broader community. It's very important to see here then, all men are called to be fathers. Fatherhood will always be the fulfillment of masculinity, not necessarily by biological fatherhood, but yes, by one of the other two forms, because the other one that we can just say, the kind of continuing to form human life by helping people grow in their humanity. This is fathering. Neat sidebar. In the Christian tradition, this is seen very clearly in very powerful ways. At times, men explicitly set aside, sometimes by vow, the possibility of becoming a father in that first and most obvious beautiful sense of becoming a biological father. But the sense was always this: you set that aside in view of thereby being able to become all the more a father in these further ways. Again, masculinity is always about a generous, looking to others, looking to their good, being provident for them, taking responsibility for them way. This is always what fatherhood is. There's so much more that we can say there, and I'm going to leave most of the things to be brought out in our discussion. Although one thing I want to say here is this. One of the things that fatherhood does is, by its being very careful in stepping up in taking first responsibility. Men in the role of fatherhood, and this is especially clear in the household and would play it out a little bit differently in other areas. Let's just focus on where it's most obvious to see this. Men need to be willing to step forward in an active and initiating way. You've heard it said before that part of the feminine genius, key at the center of the feminine genius, is the receptive. The corresponding aspect of that in the masculine genius is being initiating. To be willing to step forward, as it were, and move first. Look to the whole, take responsibility for the whole, arrange for the whole. Don't wait to have others move. Move first. I'm going to step up and take responsibility for this. In the household in particular, I'm going to step up and take first responsibility. A beautiful aspect of that, about which we can talk more, is you need a father, especially, to make the household a place fit for motherhood. If the world is going to be a place that is safe for that astounding thing called being a mother. Men have to be willing to step up and take their active and initiating role as fathers in carving out a space, in protecting and setting up a context, in arranging it and ordering it oh so carefully, being providence for this amazing thing called the household in such a way that motherhood can happen here. I'm going to suggest that this is a fabulous basis for all fatherhood will have that kind of character, like we just spoke of a father in a household. And I'm going to make a few concrete suggestions now as to what a man in college might do in view of looking towards getting ready now to step more fully into being a man, and in whatever way your vocation will be, to be a father. And by the way, I use the word vocation there. Our life is about so much more than a profession or a career. Human life is so serious. It's so beautiful. There are important things in college to be taken care of, making sure we're getting our studies done. Absolutely, it's a key, obviously, duty at this point. But unto what end? Where are we going? Right? If we just kind of go with the flow, it's just kind of it's your career preparation. What career for you? What career path are you going to follow? We keep, without our feeling or recognizing consciously, we're constantly just pushed to think in terms of take care of yourself. What's it going to be for you? What do you want to do? Rather than, my father taught me to be responsible. I, in all I do, am looking how will I become more ready to step not simply into a career, but into a vocation, where in whichever one it is, I'm going to be responsible, not just for myself, which I am, but in a sense, an even more powerful way for these others who will depend upon me. No wonder so many young men feel kind of directionless. They're focusing on things that aren't so important, that don't give meaning and direction. If being a man is just going out and having success in the business world, who cares? Is this bodily pleasures and getting attention? Being macho? Feeling bodily strong? Unto what ends? If God made men strong in body, it's a great question to ask, why? Boy, there's a good reason. And when we recognize what those deeper reasons are, this is part of the deeper self-discovery of the amazing beauty to what we're called to. All right, here's a couple practical suggestions. Take responsibility, first of all, for growing in character and wisdom, and have a plan for that. Sure, gentlemen, your daily duty is going to be to be giving due to your studies, and I need you to give proper due to your studies. Make your studies, gather that into the deeper project of growing as a human person, more specifically as a man. Take responsibility for growing in character and in wisdom. I was really blessed to be studying philosophy, and there, to some extent, then, in the very course of studies I was doing, it gave me an opportunity more to be able to look at growing in wisdom. If your course of studies isn't giving you directly that opportunity, it's still very important that you give due attention to it. But then you also need to be asking yourself, what are you doing to be growing in wisdom? Because you need to be growing in wisdom and in character. And no one's going to do that for you. So I need you to be intentional, I need you to make a plan. So first of all, taking responsibility. Be ready to take responsibility for other people, you need to take responsibility for yourself. What's your plan to grow in character and grow in wisdom? Because it doesn't happen by accident. Second, put a priority on forming real male friendships. Once again, it doesn't happen by accident. Are we serious and intentional about recognizing I've got to know what I'm looking for, and I've got to set forth to find it. I've got to be willing to be very discerning. Gentlemen, there'll be a whole panoply of people that you need to have relationships of integrity with in your life. But there's a very small number of men that you can roll up your sleeves and really join together with in this amazing project of growing as a man. You need to find, again, with a discerning eye, men who are willing to do that with you. Then you need to start to take the steps of growing in deeper friendship, one of the biggest ones of which is to hold one another accountable. The more you think about what it even means to hold one another accountable, realize this is not for the faint of heart. This is not for the people that aren't really going deeper with one another, because you can't just hold anybody accountable. You can't hold someone accountable you've only known for 2 weeks. You need to be investing the time to get to know one another well. And here I'm talking about friendships with other men. You need to have strong friendships with other men. If you're not spending enough time, so they told me to be hard on you, so okay, I'm going to be hard on you. Ready? Spend less time with the ladies. The relationships that are really going to grow you are the relationships with other men who are going to hold you accountable as a man. We can just kind of be blowing out so much time, socializing, spending time with the ladies. There's a time for that. But life is serious. Are you growing? This is connected to the first point of what's your plan to grow in character and wisdom. Third suggestion, interact with women in integrity. Quick suggestion here. Have a chastity plan. Again, you hear a theme here, and I'm saying, great things don't happen by accident. Show me a man who's chaste. That wasn't a whoops. He knew what he was about, and he set forth to do it. He sought other men to help him to do it. 2 key things I'd love to see in your chastity plan are, 1, very practical, concrete, and we'll move on. Guarding the eyes. What a manly thing to do. Men need to be strong. You need to be able to guard your eyes. If every attractive lady that passes by you, your eyes are following, this is not the way to be. We need to discipline ourselves, even if that weren't a sin. I'm going to encourage you, strengthen yourself. Get the interior discipline that comes through the exterior discipline of being willing to say no so that you'll be able to say yes to the deeper and more important things. So guarding your eyes. And the other is turn to Scripture to help you grow in chastity. The power of God's Word. Have a few lines you've committed to memory. Times of temptation, just go to those words. I look to the mountains from which comes my help. Whatever it is, commit them to memory, have them ready on hand. That's just a quick suggestion to you. Fourth, and I've only got one more after that, be intentional about your interior life. There's nothing more manly than a strong interior life. Be a man of the Word. Be a man of the Word of God. Be a man of prayer. This is the source of your strength. A man needs to be strong. A man needs to be confident. His strength and his confidence have to be rooted in the deepest of things because he's got great things to do. So it should be rooted in your relationship with our Lord. Are we taking the time to spend with Him to cultivate that relationship, to become a man of the Word? Here's a great quotation I love from medieval Dominicans. We cultivate silence so as to cultivate our speech. Men need to have something to say. When the time comes, you don't have to be a man of many words, but you have to have the right words at the right time. And if we're going to have the right words at the right time, we need to have silence, a rich silence of our interior life from which well forth the power of great words. Finally, I'm going to suggest follow St. Joseph. Follow St. Joseph. Being over appearing. If there's one thing that St. Joseph patterned for us men, It's this point about masculinity. It does not matter how you appear. It matters who you are. He was not concerned with what people thought of him. People, did they know what a man of prayer he was? What a man of work he was? What a man of integrity he was? What an astounding husband he was? What a jaw-dropping father he was, in the true sense of the term, because he raised his son. That's to be a father. He was raising up his son. Do other people know this? Did St. Joseph care? St. Joseph was a man. His masculinity most evident in his astounding fatherhood. Men, you and I, whatever fatherhood it is, whatever form it's going to take to which we're called, it's going to follow that same basic pattern. Let's just remember St. Joseph and the simple things of the interior life, of fundamental relationships, of being someone over how we appear. Thanks so much for listening. I'm going to leave it at that for now. So we're going to take a couple of minutes where if you have questions, you can send those in, and we'll back just a couple minutes here, and we'll be sitting in these plush chairs behind us. Thanks so much.
and we're back. I will say my heart was burning listening to that. That was wonderful.
Well, thank you.
And,
Thank you.
And like you were saying a little bit before this is so serious. It's not something to joke about, and it's very serious. So
Nicole's saying that because I was, Nicole.
yes.
Nicole was saying that because I was saying, sometimes I know when I start to talk about these things, I could just get so serious, and I feel like, oh my gosh, am I just being that kind of overbearing? So thank you because I do get really excited and
Yeah, we need to be told things how they are without sugarcoating. So yeah. Alrighty, so we're gonna start off with a question from Nick.
Great.
And he is asking, as someone planning to enter religious life, I would be interested to know how you would articulate masculinity in relation to spiritual fatherhood and what the generation of the human good would look like in that circumstance.
Great. Super question. And really what that comes down to, so here's an opportunity for us to think about a really, really great principle. To understand fatherhood, we have to understand what a truly good human life is. Right, so we've talked about fatherhood is the masculine mode of being a generator of human life. The more that we understand the incredible richness of what real human life is, then we understand the richness of the generation of it. And so here I'd say, the most obvious things that we think about when we think about generating life is, okay, first is the biological generation, but then we think about, okay, the raising of children. But consider this. Yes, for the raising of children, what's best suited for their formation, their growing in, as it were, their humanity, is this amazing community that's so worth talking about more of the household. Right? Not that the household is just enclosed, it has relationships to other households, it's in a broader community, it's related to the church, but fundamentally the household is the place of the formation of the young. Although, interestingly, note also how a father, in becoming a better father, is continuing to grow himself as a man also. And so the beautiful aspect of a household is not just a place where children grow, it's where the parents too, especially then in their spousal relationship, are growing into more fully who they are, but in a special way by their having that amazing gift to be the causes, the generators of the growing of their children. Okay, so the question was how to think about spiritual fatherhood. Well, here's the thing. The spiritual life is central to human life. And so I want us to see the generation is ongoing throughout life. In other words, think of, we think of someone who's ready to leave the home at 18, 21, whatever. But I mean, think about it. 18, 21-year-olds, I'm around them all the time. I mean, they can be decent, downright decent people.
A little bit scary, I will say.
They're young, right? I mean, there's a lot more growth to be done. And so there's so much, shall we say, in adult formation, and where it's not so much making sure people are fed. But when we talk about spiritual fatherhood, this is in many ways the key ongoing fatherhood of helping people grow into the full humanity in, say, their spiritual life. So I'm just going to right now just say this from the viewpoint of real quickly of a priest. And there's different kinds of, but just let's say, the parish priest, who they are. The parish is in many ways like a household. Here he is in so many different ways, acting so as to be trying to generate, to bring about the fuller life of people. I mean, just because we as Christians recognize that's not just like extra gravy. This is where human life is happening. So this is not just, we'll just go ahead and pat Father on the head and say he's kind of like a father over there. Okay, yeah. No, this is he's generating what in many ways life is about. Real quick other thing, I was just reading today a great text where, remember just to remind you of the quick philosophy of it, we said there were the 3 levels of the biological, and then just forming people more, and then also working for the common good is another way of generating the good. He says if you're called to, say, go off and become a contemplative religious. St. Thomas Aquinas says, you don't go become a contemplative religious, isn't this powerful, just for yourself, as though, well, I'll just go do that because this is me. You go do that for the whole church. And so you are actually giving the gift of your contemplative life to the whole church as a way of growing the church, as it were. And that is a extremely powerful fatherhood towards the church. So that's another version of religious life, depending on what our questioner was thinking.
Right. Beautiful. And that reminds me of the sense of responsibility for the other, and how even living a life predominantly alone as a religious, a deep life of prayer, how that is still, you are just giving yourself for the church.
Amen.
I never understood it like that before. That's incredible.
Amen. And that is so, the communal aspect, the community aspect of Christianity is so at the heart. My vocation is not just about me.
Yes.
It's fundamentally, in it I will achieve my greatest perfection, but precisely in giving myself. And again, isn't this always what a father is? A father / a true man is always someone who looks to the good of others more than to his own good. This is who a father is. Isn't it just pattern, if you keep coming back to the most obvious instance of the man in his home? In our contemporary society, fathers have so been ripped out of the home. We need to reconnect them. We need to reconnect them with that special place where they are living with and for their wife.
Yes.
And with and for their children, where their life is an oblation. The beautiful thing is still patterned by so many amazing husbands and fathers.
Yes. So let's talk about the household a little bit more.
Okay.
One thing that you heavily emphasized is how serious and beautiful human life is. So with that, one thing that I hear a lot, especially going to public school and attending a secular university, is this kind of fear of, oh, once you get married, you're losing your freedom, and you have to kind of put your career on the sidelines. And it's like this reluctance to embrace the call to carrying on, and what was it you said, generating that human life. But there's this fear of losing freedom. So can you speak into that a little bit to kind of, I don't know, excite us about that calling?
I'll try. That's a great question, and I mean, really, you're going right to the heart of the matter, because John Paul II calls our culture in many ways a culture of death. And he's talking about a lot more than just things like abortion. Right? Yeah. Our culture is death dealing to us. Fatherhood is always about life. Our culture is in so many ways death dealing to us. One thing that is death is selfishness. Selfishness is always a kind of death. And I'll say, the word freedom is just, of course, a bomb waiting to go off, right? Freedom properly understood is a gem. Freedom misconstrued is death. And so, is there a genuine giving up of something, and in some sense a giving up of freedom by a husband and wife? By the way, sidebar, very important theme for me in thinking about household, is husband and wife both need to be thinking in terms of to get married and form a household, they are both giving things up. Some people think the traditional view of family is the woman simply stays at home, and then the husband just goes out and gets to kind of do his thing. While there might be something there where the woman is more in the interior of the home, at the same time, a real father sees himself just as a real mother does as very much having to give himself for his spouse and for his children, for this household. And that household has to have a certain priority for him where he's failing in his manhood if it's playing second fiddle to his career out there. So there's a real way in both that our society is lying to us about constantly just putting before our eyes, your fulfillment is going to be in going out there, and it's always this career or profession. It's not all a lie. It's not that there's nothing to those things.
Right.
But we've lost a conception. What's human life about anyway? Right? We've misunderstood. We've missed the power and the beauty of the household as a natural community that most of us are called to live in which you will find yourself and become yourself. Most of all, in a way, again, I go back to St. Joseph. I mean, again, this is serious. Are we just going, oh, well, that was just Joseph. He kind of had to do that because he happened to be the father of Jesus. So, I mean, look, what's he known for? Not much. Other than he was a husband and he was a father, and I'm sure he was a great carpenter of integrity. But his being a carpenter was more part of this greater thing for him of being a household. So I'm just going to say, we could go into it at the moment. There is, if my wife were here, she would say, and this was lurking in your great question, there is a special sacrifice. I will not deny it, but this is not our topic right now, of a woman who gets married, for her to be especially the mother that she is called to be.
Yes.
She has to think in somewhat different terms than the world is constantly pushing her to, that tells her she can do everything. I'll go on record as saying it. I'm sorry if it's not a pleasant thing to hear, but I think it's part of the beautiful truth.
Yes.
Is no, she can't do everything. And if she tries to do everything, she will be a poor mother. And we don't want her to be a poor mother. I'm not saying that everything gets sacrificed to it,
Right.
but there is a certain kind of priority. We've lost the sense of that power and beauty of what it is to be a mother, which can include in it a lot of other things. It's not just staying at home and doing nothing else.
Right.
But nonetheless, we must learn again the power and beauty of that is worthwhile sacrificing certain other things.
Yes. Which is, in its essence, free, right? Because as far as I understand it, true freedom is just using your will to choose God's plan.
Well said.
So.
Well said.
Yeah, and I think our culture just throws a lot of lies and confusion at us all of the time.
Amen. The natural plan, God's plan, is always better than we have yet realized.
Wow.
It's always better. And we need men and women of courage who are willing to recognize. I go back to the original point of God has a plan. It can take a lot of different specific forms, but the fundamental lines of it, that there's a plan for masculinity, for femininity, for fatherhood, for motherhood, for households, given, yes, real diversity, but certain fundamental principles that if we're willing in humility to discover it and live it out, we become the best version of ourselves. We fulfill who we are when we, and therein is real freedom. It does not the witness of the society in which we live make this clear? We're being lied to about what freedom is and how fulfilling it is or not.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you. And just one more thing about St. Joseph. I love that you're touching on him so much, especially because our men's ministry is called the Society of St. Joseph, and the concept of humility. So in your talk, it was just made very clear, St. Joseph never sought the spotlight. And also, he was a man of great selflessness. And selfishness leads to death. So how can men imitate St. Joseph, even though there is, in men and women, like a a strong desire to be noticed and approved of by other people.
Yeah, that's great. And how about this? A little bit of Aristotle. It's natural. There's something natural about wanting to be recognized. But the thing is this: the deeper thing is the desire to be good. The good, the noble, is worthy of recognition. And very often we slip, especially in our fallen condition, to seek for the recognition more than the being worthy of it. So we might put it this way: we seek to be noticed rather than seeking to be noteworthy. The richer thing, of course, is to be noteworthy. But it's in many ways it's harder to become, and so we're constantly, again, this age with social media and so forth. We're how can we present ourselves so that people will notice us? The thing is this: even if people do notice us, if we aren't noble and thus really noteworthy, the noticing will never fill us. It's only the being worthy that actually fills us. And here's the wisdom of St. Joseph. Here's the wisdom of any man or woman who have recognized our greatness is in receiving the gift of the plan, becoming a person of integrity, becoming a person of character, growing in wisdom. This is what's ultimately worthy of being noticed. And I love to say, I have to admit, I love this thought. There's nothing wrong, again, with ultimately wanting to be affirmed, right? I love to picture, I don't think it's wrong to do so. One day, God grant that we go to heaven.
Hopefully.
I do this little daydream of walking into heaven and the Lord raising his hand and saying, everybody, stop what you're doing for a moment, because I want you to look for one moment at my son John. And welcome to him. He's a good man. Now, this is just this little daydream, right? May I, or any of us, be worthy of such a thing? I think there's a fittingness, there's a time to be recognized. But you want to be recognized by those whose recognition makes the difference. Right? God and the angels always see when we're good. And they're the ones who most of all matter. And those few humans, right? Did St. Joseph need more than an amazing wife who would every now and then look him in the eyes and say, you are the husband of my dreams? Right? What does St. Joseph, what does he need? Fame? Does he need other people telling him he's cool? That he's handsome? That he's buff? That he's whatever? That he's the best carpenter ever? So recognition by a few. We need to be affirmed.
Yeah.
But we seek. Again, it goes back to what is the true human greatness. That's what we seek.
Right.
Being over appearing. Appearing will take care of itself.
Yes, and I think it gets to the point when you're talking about the interior life where the recognition of God and the angels and the saints is really what matters most to the man. And we have a couple questions.
Please go ahead.
Along these lines, and these are from Demetrius. And so you were talking about the importance of forming our minds and growing in wisdom. So for those of us outside of having a formal liberal arts education, do you have any reading suggestions to grow in wisdom and character?
Great question. I always wish I were more prepared for the what would you suggest to read. And part of it is kind of individual dependent. So I'm going to go a little more general. And I will mention an author or two. First of all, the great news is good spiritual reading. Right, the spiritual masters are a great way of growing in wisdom. Scriptural commentaries, Right, so there's so much wisdom in the Scripture itself. So first of all, that is a key way of growing in wisdom. But I know the person is looking for a little more than that, which I'm all about. Here, I'm just going to throw out a great philosopher of the 20th century. His name is Joseph Pieper, Pieper. Ignatius Press has a number of his books. He's got a book on the cardinal virtues. He's got a book called Leisure, the Basis of Culture. He's got a book on festivity. In Tune with the World, A Theory of Festivity. He's got a lot of rich, it's not an easy read, but it's perhaps not too far away for those who are working on education. Maybe they haven't read much philosophy. He's a philosopher. G.K. Chesterton is another one. He's got a great introduction to St. Thomas Aquinas, who was one of the persons that I was referring to. He has a great book called St. Thomas Aquinas, The Dumb Ox. That's a great introduction to the thought of St. Thomas. That was St. Thomas's nickname because he was a giant of a man and dumb. He didn't speak much early on in his life. Isn't it funny that so they was called the Dumb Ox? But I'm not going to just say run out there and start reading Aristotle, although I will say this, things like going online and finding things like at the Institute of Catholic Culture. I give a number of lectures there. They have a great series. I'm about to teach an intro to philosophy class there.
Awesome.
They have other stuff like that that's available for everybody who isn't getting that kind of thing in their own college. So I'd say be savvy about looking about those things. I put things on my blog, and I'm putting up a free course for men called Man of the Household. Right?
Awesome.
This is the type of thing that there's people that have been blessed, as I have, in having the time and occasion and vocation to study these things.
Yes.
And we have a strong sense of wanting to share this. So there was just a few thoughts. If some other author I want to recommend comes to my mind as we're going on, there's so many things, John Paul II. Thanks for that great question.
Yes, and I just wanted to kind of finish up that question with another small question.
Great.
So there's a lot of focus on reading and growing in wisdom, growing in knowledge, but knowing things in and of itself, I wouldn't say that's what helps us reach heaven. So how do we make sure that our learning and our growing in wisdom and knowledge is rooted in our relationship with God and doesn't become I know a lot of things and I'm very intellectual and that's kind of it?
Wow, that's a great question. As I like to say to my students, that you're asking the question that's a really good one, in a sense a hard one, is already implying the answer. And that's so you. I'd say, you said, how do you make sure that your kind of relationship with Christ it remains primary? I say, make sure your relationship with Christ remains primary. In other words, you're seeking the truth. This connects with the quotation or the thought I just gave you a couple minutes ago from St. Thomas about the true contemplative. It almost sounds strange to say it, is seeking wisdom. Yes, because he wants to see, but it's not just for himself. It's certainly not ever to appear a certain way. That's something really, so I'm going to go back to the being versus appearing. Because you know what is always a temptation for those that start to become more educated, is we're so tempted to want to appear smart.
Right.
To appear educated. And to speak that way. It is so careful to watch yourself, to check yourself, to be checking your intentions. Why? The true wise man, even going back to the likes of Socrates, is very humble. He tends to underestimate his own knowledge, and he never, ever shows it off. And it's a sure sign that you're getting more wise, that you care more about being than appearing. Yes. If you're finding yourself wanting to, show off, like a turkey, kind of, strut your stuff intellectually, then we need to check ourselves. We need to go back to our Lord and say, Lord, help me to be more humble. Help me to make this be about you, because this is about you and about my serving you. A man is always about service, as is a woman in her own way. So yes, watch very carefully for that. The true wisdom is never something to strut or to be worried about how we're appearing.
Wonderful, thank you. This question is from Pedro, and he's asking if you have some practical tips on how to be a father as a college student in our dorms, in our apartments, in the Catholic Patriot community.
That's great. I do. I go back to, we said that the characteristic, especially of the man, is to be initiating. And if there's one thing that, interestingly, I think men in our society, they've as it were given that up. It's men need to be willing to come forward and take the lead in serving and looking to the good of the community. This is a very, and I see what you said, when you first said be a father, you of course mean quotation marks around it. You're not talking about you got your 3-year-old in the other in the dorm room.
Not yet.
But not yet, right, all things in their time.
Right.
To look, for instance, I mean, look, I'm just going to put in a plug for, like, the Catholic Campus Ministry and the men's group, to have a sense of how can I work for the good, to take responsibility. Hey, this is a really important group here. This is a place that teaches. This is a place that forms. This is a place that is a refuge. This is a place that people can come from for formation. I'm not just going to take from this group. I'm going to give to it. This is what a man does. A man gives more than he takes. So how can I get involved here and give of myself? And in that, of course, I am going to grow as a man. Because remember, the man who is being unselfish as a father, his own masculinity is growing, right? He's actually being formed as he's giving. So what do I want to do? To look with that unselfish eye. Now, again, you can go overboard with this. You have to remember, give due time to their studies, etc. All things in their place. But a great thing is to be asking, what can I do to serve this community? What can I do to raise the bar here? How can I, likewise, in the smaller areas of, or more proximate areas of my friendships with other men? Am I stepping up to really look how I can serve them, how I can grow with them, how I can go deeper with them? That's a very masculine thing to do. And to be willing to ask, to be willing to lead, to be willing to say, guys, we ought to be doing this, right? Those are forms of generosity, of thinking together, getting more involved in the little community things, / the friendship things, / any relationship that I'm in.
Yes.
Take the lead. If I'm in a dating relationship, am I pursuing that with integrity? Am I taking first responsibility in this relationship for chastity? Am I taking first responsibility in this relationship for saying, are we giving our due time to other relationships? Are we giving our due time to our studies? That I am willing to step forward and, as it were, think of that first and see it as my strict responsibility to be asking that question already, even if the person I'm dating is not asking that question.
Right. Wonderful. Thank
thoughts
you.
there.
Okay, and then the other question from Demetrius, he said, you said, so correct me if I'm wrong, that masculinity is a set of virtues. What are some virtues that, especially in college, we should work on to develop past responsibility?
Past in addition to responsibility?
Yes, in addition.
Okay, all right, so here's the thing. That's a great question, Demetrius. I don't think it's not far off. I don't think I actually said that masculinity is a set of virtues. Rather, masculinity, so I'm just going to quickly kind of clarify and then answer the good question. Masculinity is a set of characteristics that are ultimately ordered towards being a father. Now, for those characteristics to blossom into what by their nature they should be, I must cultivate virtue. So masculinity is not itself already the virtues, but for masculinity to become what it should be and blossom into fatherhood is going to take my cultivating all of the virtues. But there are certain ones that we can focus on, and I'm going to give a couple of suggestions here. One of them is courage. So let me just say what is a couple quick things about courage from Aristotle and St. Thomas. Two main acts that the courageous person does. When necessary, he attacks. That doesn't necessarily mean, taking somebody out, but as it were, attack that which would be threatening the good. Also, the courageous man endures. And so patience is right in there. And so I'd say it's particularly characteristic of the man to do both of those aspects of courage. To be willing to step forward, and that's kind of in the spirit of kind of taking the lead. If something is threatening the good of our community, if something that's threatening the good of our relationships, if there's something I can do here to attack that, as it were, in protection of the good, in whatever proximate or further away way it is in my life, that kind of, quote, attack, being proactive in defending the good, a very strong masculine thing to do. Think about different ways to do that. To endure. Dare I say, men are being very demasculinized in the sense that we're becoming wimpy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to think in terms of, how about not complaining, right? I mean, we have such a culture of kind of complaining / entitlement. I mean, just picture, was St. Joseph a complainer? Was St. Joseph a, hey, you can't do that to me kind of guy? To endure, to be willing to put up with a lot of stuff that just put up with it. There's no reason at this point to be making a big deal of it. This is a very manly thing to do because there's more important things to be gotten done. I have to be willing to endure. All right, so that was attack, endure, under courage, chastity. / I'm going to go broader real quick, temperance. Men, the real man is always characterized by restraint. Practice being a man by practicing restraining your desires. So I'll tell you one thing that becomes very obvious in a household. You will not be able to be a good husband or father except to the extent that we have learned to consistently, habitually control our desires so as to put higher things first. Great way to practice in how we eat. A man is willing to restrain himself. He has ordered his passions there. He knows how to enjoy good food, but he's restrained. I like to also say, this is a very practical thing, the great tradition holds, and by the way, cut me off if we're on time, just real fast.
Yeah, you're good.
That a great way to practice chastity is in the area of food. It's almost like a little gift of God. God gave us food where you can practice restraining yourself and ordering your desires. Being unrestrained in the area of food doesn't always, but tends to undermine other bodily desires.
Right.
So I say, particularly encourage the men as regards courage, and as regards a noble restraint. Practice being strong by putting the order into our passions in the area of temperance. Taking cold showers, by the way, is another good thing to do. Very manly thing to do, and it strengthens you. Honestly, not that in itself is a virtue, but it can be part of our general discipline.
Yeah.
Always bearing in mind where we're going.
Incredible.
Right? Just a couple thoughts there for Demetrius.
Wonderful, thank you. We have a couple more questions.
Okay.
This one is from Ryan. He said, you said that we need to find those men to have friendships with. How do you know who those friendships are?
Great question. By being very careful, by being very discerning, and by being very prayerful. Here, I just, in rewriting I originally wrote this book on friendship for focus. I rewrote it, and it's literally coming out right now, where the chapter that I added that I'm very excited about because it used St. Alured. St. Alured, a great book I will recommend, is St. Alured's book on friendship that's called Spiritual Friendship. I tried to take some of that. He gives some very practical direction for things to look for in people. And right now I'm going to put it this way. Don't hesitate to be very discerning. Don't feel that you're being judgmental. First of all, look towards yourself and be, in a sense, hard on yourself of asking yourself, do I have the kind of character that it takes to be a good friend? So you're not being judgmental of others in a way that you're not being judgmental of yourself. So first of all, be very self-reflective and self-examining in your examination of conscience, and then be working on those things that I need to change so as to be able to be a better friend. Then that puts you in a better position to be able to look, and you're asking, I mean, he says, is the person really going to be trustworthy? Is the person a discreet person? When I share into my deeper secrets with this person, is this the type of person that's going to tell it to other people? If so, it's not going to work.
Right.
Friendship requires that kind of trust,
Yes.
that kind of integrity. It says, is this person a person that's too concerned about what other people think and swayed by what people think about him?
Very
Then you're not
important.
going to be able to count on him, because when the pressures of peer pressure, what other people are thinking come in, he's not going to be your faithful friend. So those kind of things that, frankly, are kind of intuitively obvious, it's nice when St. Albert goes through and kind of gives the list of these things. But I mean, right now I'm just going to say it's the main thing is, don't, in the name of friendship, be willing to be picky. It is not being elitist or overly judgmental. Does this person have an interior life? Can you go deeper? Will there be things that you share to talk about? Are you reading Scripture? Are you both reading Scripture on your own, such that you'll want to talk about it together? Was it Ryan?
Yes.
Ryan, he'll see, he'll notice. He knows what to look for. I just encourage you, Ryan. Look and pray. Ask the Lord to send you good friends.
Yes.
He wants you to friendship too. Might not happen tomorrow, but it's coming. The one thing that's in your power, Ryan, is become the man that's ready to be a friend.
Wow.
If you become the man who can be a true friend, you're going to find true friendship. It's going to happen, and you're going to be able to recognize them, and they'll recognize you. I'm not saying by that there's magic and you know immediately. It still is a discerning process, but there's a certain kind of, it's almost the way St. Albert talks about it, it's almost like dating and engagement. It's because you spend some time getting to know the person. It's not like you say, well, we're kind of dating as friends now or something like that. Dating towards friendship. No, but you know that in your own mind, that you're starting to spend that time together. Do we have those deeper sharing things? And if you have to separate a bit, hey, you only have so much time. You're not doing it to be mean. You're not doing it to reject that person, but everything in their place in your life.
Wow. It's relieving to hear that, because I think in my own experience, the whole not wanting to be judgmental or picky has come up a lot. So thank you. And thank you for emphasizing the seriousness of having good friends.
Good.
That's incredible.
Good,
okay,
good.
Last question.
One question, right.
This question is from John, and this is awesome. He's wondering, how do we make a home for mothers as college students?
Okay, in other words, that question is referring to my saying a true father makes a home a place that's safe for motherhood.
Yes.
And I'm going to put it this way, John. You're firing on all cylinders there, my man. That's a great question. And I'm going to say, first of all, here's the good news. Even if you are not asking yourself and able to answer this great question of, gosh, how do my actions as a man make it safe for women to be growing in their femininity? I would put it this way, that first of all, the things that we've been talking about as ways of growing as a man are fundamentally the things that are going to make it, as it were, safe and women more capable, particularly those in your circle, as being women. Why? Because first of all, they're going to be inspired by you. They're going to be moved by you. They're going to be drawn, seeing you taking so seriously, stepping forward, being willing to take responsibility, working on your courage, working on your chastity, honoring them. John, one of the most important things a man needs to learn how to do is to see women for who they are. And it will take you years. but you need to start trying now, recognizing there's much more there than you've seen yet. And you need, with modesty and humility and courage, to be willing to keep learning and to listen. Everything comes together here, John. The more you're a good man, the more you're going to be able to recognize womanhood and femininity. The more you're going to inspire it, the more that a woman, the beauty of it is, and this is more than just in the most obvious sense that I mean this, a woman is safe. She deserves to be safe in the deeper and richer senses of the term. She deserves to have a context that invites her to blossom in her sensitivity, in her receptivity. So by your trying to be more like St. Joseph, you make it possible for women to be more like the Blessed Mother. The Blessed Mother, remember, she could not have borne her son had St. Joseph not been a man who, in the unbelievably difficult situation, the unbelievably humiliating situation, looked at this and said, okay, I will still do this. You are my wife. This is my child. Jesus and his mission could not have happened if St. Joseph did not make the Blessed Mother's bearing her son possible. St. Joseph made the home of Nazareth a place safe for the maternity of the Blessed Mother by his being a man, by his putting being over appearing, by his putting courage and character and wisdom first. You do those things, and you put that in combination with having to learn. Have the humility, I'm sorry I'm saying too much, have the humility to see and to learn from women. There's this amazing complementarity of you help each other discover who one another are. In certain ways, a woman is going to learn better who she is through your being a man. And in certain ways, she's going to teach you who she is as a woman in a way that you never would have seen if you don't have the humility as a man to listen. So many men are so in their own hand of thinking they already know things, thinking they know more than they do, and they don't know how to hear women. Be humble, listen, and keep trying to be like St. Joseph.
I am speechless. Wow. Wow. That's incredible. I think we're all going to be rewinding this and watching it again 10 more times. From the bottom of my heart and from all of our hearts, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thanks,
letting
really
the Lord
appreciate it.
work through you so clearly and so wholly.
Well, thank you. It's great to be with you all. God bless you. It's clear you all have a great thing going here. So
Awesome.
My
Thank
prayers
you.
are with you, and all the best.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And in our last couple minutes, I'm just going to introduce our topic for next week. Next week is our last TNS of the semester. And it is going to be on finding freedom, living as a Christian with same-sex attraction. And our speaker is Kim Zember. You may recognize her from Ascension Presents videos. So she's going to be joining us, which is going to be awesome. And just a brief description of what that's going to be. Kim will expose details of her life that many wouldn't dare to admit. Her desires for women, money, and comfort led her down a path far from that of her Christian upbringing. Her impulsive lifestyle, coupled with an underlying fear of being alone, constantly drive her to drown out the small whisper of God she hears in the moments of silence and stillness. Torn by her desires, she lives a double life, jumping back and forth from husbands to girlfriends, drunken nights to morning church, Southern California real estate to nonprofit work in Ethiopia. A life of conflict, questioning, and seeking embody the struggle of the human soul. Yet even out of the darkest moments, love breaks through in radical ways and carries her into her God-given purpose, into serving others, into joy. Kim's transparency about her life offers encouragement to those seeking peace and joy for their own restless hearts. And in the end, love wins. So stay tuned and join us next Thursday at 7 to hear her story and her wisdom and to ask your questions. And our last thing, please join us tonight, 30 minutes at 9 p.m. for our Thursday night comp line. And a graphic for that should be up so you can join on Zoom. But other than that, thank you for joining us and have a wonderful night.